well get started, I think. And that having been said, I call to order the regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission for April 7th, 2021. Cheryl, would you call a roll, please?
Yes, Chair Quillisi,
Here?
Vice Chair Nolan,
Here.
Commissioner Lottis,
Here.
Commissioner Trent,
Not yet.
not yet, Commissioner Swift, absent.
Absent. Okay, if you will all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Cheryl, if you can put a flag up for us. There you go. After me. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. All right, next on the agenda is public communications. Cheryl, Lucas, have we any written or electronic communications?
Have none.
None, okay. We'll move on then to the consent item, the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, March 17th, 2021. Any adds, changes, or corrections from a council member, or from, excuse me, a commissioner? Don't want to overstep our bounds there. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the March 17th, 2021 Ojai Planning Commission meeting.
Okay,
Second.
second by Commissioner Lottis. Any discussion? Then Cheryl, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Chair Quillisi,
Yes.
Nolan,
Here, yes.
Lottis,
Yes.
Trent,
Okay.
Not
Next, disclosures of site visits and ex parte contacts, and we have two potential visits. Hi, John. This evening. One over at the condo complex off of Maricopa Highway, and then also at 205 Palomar. I'm familiar with both locations. I have not visited them in the past week. For those who notice a different background, I'm in Dallas right now. My brother's in the hospital.
Oh.
And so we're moving ahead. Commissioner Nolan?
Yeah, I visited both sites and I wanted to say, I think it was approximately 5 years ago, I actually did a consultation for the Creekside condominium area. It was not for trees, it was landscape related. They were going to do a turf removal and get, I think it was grant funding through Casitas. But I just wanted to disclose that I did do that about 5 years ago.
Okay.
I had no ex parte cons. I had one today when I was actually at the site. I had one member of their board stop me, and introduced herself. I wanted to know what I was doing, but other than that,
No substantive
yeah, nothing.
conversations.
Yeah, and I also visited the other site. I looked in from the street. I did not actually walk into the property, and I did go on Google Earth and looked. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lottis.
Yes, I basically drove to both sites. I did drive through through every area of the Creekside Village. And I went to the other site as well, but did not go really onto the property. And I have had no ex parte contacts.
Okay. Commissioner Trent.
No ex parte contacts, and I drove by the Creekside condos, but I hadn't had a chance to go by the other property. And that's it.
Okay. Palomar is one of those places my wife and I walk by at least once a week, so I feel okay with it. Now, the discussion item on the proposed monument sign for Ojai First Baptist Church. I think, Lucas, you had a recommendation here.
Yes, staff is recommending that the item be continued to the April 21st meeting. That'll provide staff an opportunity to work with the applicant a little bit more on refining some of that design work. We've seen a revision. We've asked for some clarification on one of the pieces, and we're looking to get some feedback from them as well.
Okay. These applicants seem willing to make changes to conform to whatever rules we have, right?
Yes,
Okay.
at this point, we'll see what happens when we go back on the 21st.
Okay. Do we need a roll call vote to continue to a date certain, Nikhil?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Then we need a motion to continue.
You can do it by motion, yes.
I'll make a mo-
Should I vote or what should I do on this one?
That's a
Since
good point.
Oh,
I will recuse again.
yeah, you will recuse again, right?
I'll go ahead and make the motion then, that we continue sign permit S20-012 to the hearing date of April 21st, 2021. To
Thank you.
continue that item.
Can we have a second? John, I can do it. You can do it. Doesn't matter.
I'll second.
Very good.
Mhm.
Any discussion? All right, Cheryl, will you call the roll, excluding Commissioner Lottis?
Yes. Quillisi,
Yes?
Nolan,
Yes?
Trent,
Yes.
and Swift is
Okay.
absent.
So we're done with that one. Ah. Okay. Public hearing item, a design review permit. Lucas, would you lead us through that, please?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Lucas Seibert, Community Development Manager here with the City of Ojai. The item being brought before the Planning Commission tonight is a second-story addition proposal to an existing two-story addition. It includes a second-story addition as well as additions to the first floor as well. However, the triggering mechanism here for this commission and this body to review and provide a determination is because of the second-story addition. That's within our municipal code. The proposal includes really two other aspects, which include the expansion to the first floor. As I just mentioned, that includes an expansion to the front of the single-family residence, as well as to the rear, and includes a covered porch added to the front of the building. In addition to that, they're looking to make a change in the facade of the building that is being proposed, and they're going from kind of a traditional style, architectural style, to a more modern design or style, architectural style. I'll pull up elevations here in a moment to kind of, I know the commission that was provided within the packet, but I think for discussion purposes, I'll provide some of those renderings that were provided within the packet as well. Typically, when you're going from you're shifting from a design aspect, especially from a traditional to a more modern style, there's some key aspects that that you would key in on here tonight, and that would include like a flat roof design that you're seeing here tonight, board and batten siding that's being proposed as a design change, the merged dormers on the second floor, and I'll show that here in the elevation here in a moment, and that's going from really kind of two dormers to a shed style dormer, which I'll show here in a moment, and then a standing seam metal roof, and then going from a lighter color tone exterior facade to a more darker exterior palette from a color standpoint. So those are kind of the all-encompassing design features that you're seeing from the exterior standpoint. At this point, I'm going to share my screen so that I can.
Lucas, I have a question, just so we can narrow our focus here potentially. my understanding is that the only thing that the applicant is asking for that is not ordinarily a ministerial decision is the creation of the new dormer on the second floor, which changes the usable floor space, I guess you'd call it. I think all the floor on the second floor is there and is unchanged, but by creating the larger dormer, you have more usable space on the second floor.
Yeah, it's interesting. The merging of the two dormers actually creates additional square footage by pulling out and pushing out walls. The total square footage of the relocation of these walls in terms of the merger of those two dormers equates to 20 square feet of area.
Okay,
There's already an existing two-story or a second story.
right, and the first floor additions, front, back, covered porch, whatever, is that something that we need to rule on, or is that already ministerial? And all that we really need to consider, whether it's in the resolution or not, what we in practical terms need to consider is the dormer.
Right, you're looking at what's before the commission. While it's a project in whole, the item that's being ruled on is the second story aspect. While it may be small in its square footage, it certainly is impactful to the overall design of the home itself.
The principal doesn't have a number in it, right?
Correct. Neither does
Commissioner Lotta?
Right, I understand why this is in front of the board, the planning commission, but we're looking at the site plan for the whole project. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's being triggered for planning commission review
yes,
because of the second story.
yes,
And if you read the staff report, I key in on two pieces. One is the second story elevation, and the second is the design, because when you look at the way in which this addition is being addressed on the second floor, it also impacts the design of the building.
right.
Which,
The facade, the roof, those materials, the colors, so forth. I do have another question though. So what is the threshold for requiring a landscape plan, or why is there not a landscape plan involved with this?
Typically with new construction, like a new home, we would have some sort of preliminary landscape plan. This is simply an addition that, if triggered, would just be done through what's referred to as a zone clearance at stop level.
Okay. So is there a threshold for requiring a landscape plan, say at like a 50% addition, or is there no, it has to be, what is the?
Construction. It would be new construction.
It's only new construction.
Yeah, so an addition.
So an existing house that has a 50% new addition, that's not triggering it.
No, the other thing is it's based on square footage, the square footage of the area that's being impacted.
In terms of triggering a landscape plan, or?
Triggering a landscape plan, yes. So there would be new construction, or if the disturbed area is over, I want to say it's over 2,500 square feet.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I don't quote me on the number, but I want to say it's somewhere in that.
okay.
Most things don't trigger a landscape plan, then, I think, is the
Most
conclusion.
single-family residential, with the exception of maybe within the arbolata, aren't going to trigger new landscaping plans.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
So does that mean that we can't comment on landscape, or could we offer suggestions, I guess?
I think you can always offer suggestions, but just know that it's being handled at staff level.
Okay,
And Commissioner Lottis, yeah, you can any suggestions. However, the findings that you're going to be making as part of this are what's within 10.2009 with the design review permit, and so I think Lucas has those laid out as well. But So any
Understood.
findings or decision-making has to be based on those. But commission is free to make any suggestions as it sees, but they can't condition approval on those.
Understand, understood.
And also know that the applicant's here as well. The architect is here tonight as well. So certainly we'll have an opportunity the commission will have an opportunity to speak and ask questions of the architect. Hold on one second.
Okay. So you have some exhibits for us, Lucas?
Yeah, so this is
Thank you.
already in your packet. However, I wanted to kind of show that merging of the dormer that I was mentioning earlier, where you have two dormers becoming one, and kind of the flattening of the although it's the first floor, which but it adds to kind of that whole design feature. I know the architect will certainly speak to this as well, but I wanted to give you kind of firsthand look as a whole commission as to what this looks like.
I want to compliment the architect. Those comparative drawings made it very easy to see what the changes are.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
With that, staff does recommend approval of this modification and second story addition based on the findings and conditions laid out in the draft resolution before the commission tonight. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. If the commission has any questions of staff, I could certainly ask. We also tonight, Steve, are going to need to open up public hearing.
Yes. Well, first, I think we need to hear from the applicant. Then we'll have a public hearing, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So if we're done asking questions of staff, then can we bring the applicant and or the owner into the conversation, Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, here we are.
Okay, can we?
Very good. Welcome to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Could you introduce yourselves and then talk about the project for us?
So, yes, thank you, Commissioner. I'm Jonas von Studnitz. I am here with my wife, Tori Horowitz, and we are the owners of the house, and I am also the architect.
Very good.
So yeah, so we've owned this house since
2019.
August, and this is our own home that we're remodeling for us and our two teenagers. And so we have started the project by building a pool accessory structure and a pool in the back, which has been recently signed off. It's complete. And so now we want to tackle this remodel of the existing house. And so we came across the issue of the second floor dormers that are facing the front, as you see in the top row. And if you look in your packet at the third to last page, which is drawing, actually, sorry, it's the last page, 3.320. You actually see the side elevation from the garage. And there you can see that the existing, I'm just waiting for him to catch up with that page so I can refer to it better. There we go.
You said the last page?
The last page, yeah. So the
Yeah.
That's good. So on the top drawing, you see the existing condition, and at the bottom you see our proposed. So the existing house already has this shed dormer facing the rear yard. So in my opinion, it always felt like this house actually had a little bit of an identity crisis, where it had like one look on the front, on the street facing, with the more traditional gable dormers, and already a more streamlined horizontal look with the more horizontal shed dormer on the rear yard. So we wanted to unify kind of the style of the building by mirroring what's already there on the rear facing side of the building and flip that to the front. So that's what you can see on our proposed. What we're doing is actually just mirroring what's already existing in the building on the other side on the front. And of course, that also has the advantage for our use of the house, since this is going to be our master bedroom. then we have that additional usable square footage. It's already there, but it's under the roof, so it's a very low ceiling height where it becomes a low height where it doesn't even get counted. So that's where these additional
Right.
20 square feet come
Right.
from.
It also, as a side note, makes our view significantly better. Not that that is of any concern to you, but it is of great concern to us because we can see the mountains
Yeah.
from that window.
Nice.
And yeah, so to speak to the rest of the design, so the tying together, in my opinion, just kind of simplifies the design and gives it kind of more of a modern farmhouse look.
You want to talk about why you're lowering the?
Oh, and then on the garage side, what was referred to until now as a flat roof is actually, as you can see also in this elevation, is just kind of a slightly pitched roof at about a 3/4 of an inch per foot pitch with exposed beams both on the rear yard and front yard side. And then that roof wraps around the building in the front on the street facing side and turns into this covered front porch. And the idea is to lower that volume to further differentiate the mass of the building. Because my understanding was that, you know, from the perspective of your commission, that a monolithic mass isn't really desirable. And my own opinion is also that that is desirable, and that I like that there's a play now from this lower portion of the building to your right, if you look at those first renderings we looked at, and the 2-story building.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the 2-story side of the building, it was important to me that we don't make the building any higher or any more voluminous. So really, if you look at those initial rendering we reviewed, it's still in this, if you drew a line of everything you can see, the building is still within that same outline, because we're keeping the ridge height, we're keeping the chimney, and on the right side, we're actually lowering the volume by creating this, this consistent, slowly pitched roof around the front of the building. And kind of, it's a little bit more of a play of different volumes and heights.
I also think it's hard to see from the renderings because the color is so dark. But it's actually more of kind of, we ride our bikes around the Arbolada all the time, and I admire the beautiful ranch houses with the front porches and the pitched roof on the front. And that's kind of what we're trying to emulate. There are several houses that we have admired that that look like that. So we've kind of taken pieces of the houses that we love in our neighborhood and kind of put that into this design. And I think it's a little bit misleading because the color looks so dark in the renderings, but it would not actually be that dark in real life.
Yeah, it's more of like a dusty gray green.
Oh.
And the idea there is the current house actually has like almost like a color. It's almost like is it a pink?
It's like it looks white in the pictures, but it's kind of like mauvey purple.
So it actually stands out quite a bit, and I like this kind of dusty green look. It kind of blends into the foreground as well as very much background of the tall, beautiful trees and the bark and everything that you kind of see around the property. So we kind of want it to be more kind of part of the landscape than stand out.
Also, I would like to address what the one commissioner was saying about the landscape plan. I know that this is not contingent on a landscape approval, but you'll notice, and maybe this is what you were referring to in the photos that's in the packet that I think you have. And if you want to go back to the beginning where you can see what the front yard looks like now. We had to, when we purchased the house, it had been abandoned for 10 years. There was nobody living there. And the previous residents had passed away and their children just kind of let the house go. When we purchased the house, we had to replace the septic tank. So the entire front yard had to be dug up. There was grass there that the realtors put in just to make the house look nice to sell. And then we had to tear everything out in order to replace the septic tank, which is in the field, basically in front of the front door. So it is our sincere intention to beautify that area with native plants and have it be very cohesive with the topography and the area. We're very committed to that, just for what it's worth.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants? Commissioner Nolan.
I don't know that I necessarily have a question, but I wanted to say that I admire what you're doing. and I don't really have any problems with it. I see it as definitely being part of the local vernacular as far as being kind of a ranch farmhouse with the board and batten, even with the roof lines and the wraparound porch. So I think it's, you know, very integrated with the neighborhood. And you've got your dark sky friendly lighting. I think the color palette is fine as well. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
You are taking that gabled cover off the front door and that becomes part of the covered porch?
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
If I could take that off with my two hands today, I would do it. But I'm not going to.
Okay. Commissioner Lottis.
I just had, I also think what you're doing is very nice, and the elevate, all the plans are very clear, and I appreciate all of that. And so really, I just had one question. I was appreciative of the comment you said that it's not going to be quite as dark as it shows up. Because I just wanted to ask you about the color of the roof. And again, that may appear to be darker than it actually will be, but I just, you know, in our hot climate, I just wondered if you we're thinking of that in terms of selecting the color, and the, you know, the darker colors make a more, results in a heavier cooling load on the house. And it's just more, this is only a comment. I'm not really opposed to what you're doing at all. And I think that you're, that it's gonna, the whole project is going to look very nice in the neighborhood. But I did want to ask you about the roof color.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I thought about that with that exact thing in mind. And that's why I didn't go with like an actual painted black, and a galvanized is actually, it's more of a, again, like a dusty medium gray that does still, in my experience, kind of reflect enough of the heat.
Okay.
It doesn't absorb as much as a darker painted galvalume or some standing seam. So it's kind of a nice compromise where the roof doesn't become like a shining object, but it's also not so dark that it becomes an energy problem. And of course, we're insulating all the roofs to a degree that they currently aren't. So that was so that we are reducing the cooling loads that way.
Okay. And actually, so are there any plans for, and I thank you for explaining that. So are there any plans for solar panels at all? And I don't think I think the state is now requiring solar panels, but again, that's for new structures, so.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We really want to do solar panels, and we have recently completed, as I mentioned, the pool accessory structure, which has a roughly 550 square foot roof that's perfectly oriented. And we already included the
Risers.
the standoffs in the roof membrane that all we have to do is bolt in the tracks.
Okay.
And we have pre-wired the entire property to run the main house, pool, and the pool house from that location. So we already included empty sleeves so that we can actually put them there, which is a good location because they're perfectly oriented and they're behind the house. So then they don't become an eyesore. So from the street, you have the beautiful location, but we still have the solar panels in a more hidden location. And I think it's the appropriate size to power up this whole property.
Sounds great. Great. And so I was also happy to hear you're talking about when it does come to landscaping, emphasizing native vegetation. That sounds perfectly compatible with the whole area. Yeah. And I appreciate that very much. And so my comment was going to be that I hope you would not be planting flammable plants, large plants like palms.
Oh God, no.
And certain eucalyptus. So that was going to be my only comments.
We're very familiar with flammable plants. Our main residence is in the Laurel Canyon area of Los Angeles, where there are eucalyptus trees that explode and fall over every single day. So we're very familiar. We have no intention of, planting any bombs.
Yeah. I also wanted to compliment you too, and notice, speaking of fire, that you're using EPA for the deck, which is considered Class A. Also, the siding is fire rated, board and batten. the cement board. So I can tell that you've pre-thought your selection of materials as far as fire goes. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that as well, even though I know some of it is in the code, but yes.
Thank you.
Looks
Yeah,
like a
I've done
good plan, right?
A lot of building in the fire zones I've done.
Yeah.
Commissioner Trent, any questions for the applicants?
No, I mean, I think it looks great. I really like the design. I like how you kind of, tried to keep with some of the traditional themes around the neighborhood, but at the same time, making it a little more modern. And obviously fire resistant as much as we can. Just a quick question on the roof height. How high is the back roof? I noticed, there's quite a bit of a grade. Is it 10 feet?
Are you talking about the rear facing?
Yeah, the
volume?
rear. Yeah.
That's about 13 feet.
13 feet. Okay. And then it drops down and then goes to the front, and the front is about.
Yeah, it's about 10 maybe, or 9.5. I don't have it exactly. My computer isn't open, but there's some columns here. That's about, around that. So it kind of gently slopes down a few feet from the very far rear facing to the front.
Right. Okay. And then the roofing material, I sorry if I missed it. Is it metal?
Yeah, so that's a standing seam metal roof.
Okay.
On visible portions, and on the flat roof, you don't see any of it. So that might just be a regular built-up roof, which also then would have the better solar reflectivity. So that's actually the majority of the roof. And that's a kind of a good compromise cost. And then everything you see would be the standing seam, which is a nice,
right,
kind of a clean look.
Forever roof kind of thing. Very cool. And then I noticed that the eaves it looks like they're exposed, but they're not really exposed, right? They're sealed up around the eaves.
Yeah, so the underside of the, I included in the material page, like an actual photograph of the completed pool house. So that kind of shows exactly what that would look like. So it's an exposed beam.
Yeah.
The structure will be at least 6 inches wide, which is considered as heavy timber and fire rated therefore. Right. And then the underside of the eave is then that same galvanized metal that matches the eave edges and the roof. So it's a completely encapsulated, fire-safe package. And what you see is the beams, and that's really important because the beams, I think, significantly add to the character and the dimension and the kind of the detail of the building that makes it a little bit more kind of craftsman, influence.
I admired that. I admired that aspect of it. We did a remodel about 3 years ago. And we have the same enclosed eaves and in some cases fake beams that come out, but it looks just like the real rafters, 4x4 rafters.
Yeah.
It's a very nice look and it's very much in keeping with Ojai.
Yes. We want to be the people that, retire in Ojai and have sensitivity for the community. And we are not the people coming there to, change anything. This is not our intention.
Okay, any other questions or comments for the applicants? All right, then I'd like to open the public hearing and ask Lucas or Cheryl, do we have anyone in the waiting room that wishes to comment on this case?
We do not have anyone in the waiting room.
Okay. Then we'll close the public hearing and come back to the commission for deliberation. Comments from commissioners?
I'm ready to make a motion. But no, let's go ahead and listen and wait.
If it's a motion to approve, I'm ready to support that. So.
I too.
Okay, what about John? Does he have any comments at this point or discussion?
I had a gallery view and lost John.
I did too, yeah.
But there he is. Appears like magic.
No, okay. I'm good too. I think we move forward.
Okay. Then I will move forward with making a motion that we adopt design review permit DRP 21-005, revisions to the existing 2-story single-family residence, dormers and roof line, which includes adding approximately 20 square feet to the existing second floor, and no change to the building height located at 205 Palmer Road, I don't know that I have to read the rest of our,
No.
but I think we're good with that.
Advice, right.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Any discussion of the motion for approval? Then Cheryl, will you call the roll, please?
Quillisi,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Lottis,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Very good. And to the applicants, thank you very much for this thoughtful design and your consideration of the community. And we wish you well with the project.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next item. It says discussion item, but this is a public hearing.
No, this is also this is a discussion item.
This is a discussion item. Okay. Tree permit T20-037. Lucas, would you introduce it for us?
Yes, absolutely. And I believe the applicant is here as well to speak specifically about the matter as well. I'll kind of give an overview, 20,000 foot, and kind of dip my toe in a little bit of specifics, and then come with a recommendation. So this is a community property tree management plan. The reason why this is before the commission is because our tree ordinance requires that if there are the removal of 5 or more trees that are either oaks, sycamores, or heritage trees, the planning commission shall make a determination, is required then to make a determination as to the merits of the proposal itself. Here tonight, we have really 17 trees. I think in the report, I actually said 18 at one point because it references 18 trees, but if you count the trees individually, it's actually 17 trees. I think either 13 or 14 is omitted. 17 trees in total. Of those 17 trees, 6 of those are sycamore trees, which are proposed for removal due to a hazard. And then 2 of those sycamore trees are not proposed for removal, but in turn proposed for trimming. And the other 11 trees, which are not listed as oaks, sycamores, or heritage trees, include 4 eucalyptus trees for removal of the 4 liquid ambers, and 1 pine tree on the site. And the site itself is actually Creekside Village. Creekside Village, the cross streets for that is Creekside Way, and that area is north of Maricopa Highway, kind of north or southwest of the community itself. As I had said before, the applicant is not actually looking to replace any of the trees slated for removal, and that means all 17 trees. For the commission tonight, the commission is looking at considering the 6 sycamores that are proposed for removal, and then the 2 sycamores that are proposed for pruning. And then with that, staff is recommending that the planning commission consider removal of these trees based on the safety concerns which have been identified within the arborist report, and then determine whether or not to adopt the attached resolution that's been provided for the commission for consideration. There's proposed findings and conditions outlined within that draft resolution for commission consideration tonight. I do know that the applicant slash property manager, I believe, which is Ray Hanstead, is in the queue for tonight. If the commission has any questions of staff, I could certainly answer them. But I do believe they are here as well to speak on the matter as well.
Okay. I do have a question if no one else does. And I've read through the conditions, but I don't have them open in front of me right now. Are any of the conditions related to replacement of the trees?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. And in the municipal code, it is strongly recommended but not required that trees be replaced? Is that appropriate?
If they're identified as hazardous trees, and that hazard is identified through a specific section of our code, which there's actually two sections that reference. One that references the hazard component, which is section 4-11.07E3. That section, if it's being identified as hazardous through an arborist report, a certified arborist making that determination, then there isn't a requirement. However, that discussion can certainly be brought forward with the applicant as to the nature of that. That's within the commission's.
But the other 11 trees are not categorized by the arborist as hazardous?
The other 11 trees are not even identified as trees for protection through our code, meaning they aren't oak trees, they aren't sycamore trees, and they aren't designated as heritage trees by resolution by City Council.
And does the code speak in any way to replacement of trees in that category?
No. No,
Okay.
only with the three that I just mentioned.
So, Steve, just the trees that have been defined by the city council by resolution are subject to the replacement, not the other trees. There's no requirement that they be replaced.
And the designation of hazardous removes the requirement for those trees, even though they are protected normally.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioner Lottis.
Lucas, could you, there was some emailing and discussion about that change to the tree ordinance about 2 years ago, in conjunction with some trees along the entry, at the entry to the city. But could you just briefly go over what happened with the change in the ordinance?
Yeah, I think it was 2017, I want to say. So in 2017, there was a fairly extensive discussion. There was a resolution that actually came forward that to the city council that identified the potential for either the preservation of specific trees. Within that was carved out the trees that you see in the ordinance today, which is the sycamores, the oaks, and the heritage trees.
And does the heritage tree have to be designated, or what is the determination that something is a heritage tree?
Excellent question. That is actually by city council resolution.
Okay, it is
so-
specific to each tree.
Yeah, our code specifically defines heritage tree to mean any tree of any genus, species, or hybrid, which is designated by specific resolution, and the resolution has to call out its historic, cultural, or other value as to the city. Yeah.
Okay,
And are there any of those at the moment, Nikhil?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Are there any so designated heritage trees by city council resolution at the moment?
I'll defer to Lucas on that, but I believe there's the three categories that we talked about. But
Man, I would have to look into that further, but Sarasate Park has a very large oak tree, and I can't remember if that is actually designated. I'd have to look into that further.
Well, if it's an oak, it's already included in the protected class. What I was asking is, are there any non-oak, non-sycamore species
Not that I'm
of
aware
trees
of.
currently under a city council resolution as heritage trees?
no.
Okay. I just want to be sure that we can focus our efforts on the right questions here.
I just want to make a quick,
Nolan, please.
yeah, just a quick comment. Prior to this change by city council, mature trees were included with the 12-inch or greater DBH. That was removed from the ordinance. So that's in other words, some of these other trees would probably have fallen under that category, but they do no longer.
The eucalyptus certainly, because they're all big, yeah.
right.
Right, and some of
Yeah, I
them,
just-
yeah.
And as a general comment, I'm seeing a lot of, well, this is a general comment, but I'm seeing a number of trees just getting horribly butchered that I think would have fallen into the category around town. And I think they would have fallen into the category of mature. So I'm hoping that this is an issue we can revisit at some point.
I'll
And-
second that.
I,
But for
I,
tonight, it doesn't, yeah.
I encourage the commission, not today, but maybe when the meeting is over, to look at Council Resolution 13-48. It's on the city's website. As it's the city's website as to trees, and that is a resolution from 2013 designating a heritage tree inventory list for the city of Ojai. And so there are 12 trees on that list, and there's specific trees called out by address and species. And so that is the current heritage tree list.
Okay,
Yeah, I believe that was generated by the Historic Preservation Commission.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and I remember them.
Yeah. There's
being
a
committee about that, yeah.
there's a handy chart that accompanies that particular resolution. And so it's council can always revisit and add more trees to that inventory list, but for the scope of today, none of these trees are on that list. That's correct, right, Lucas?
Correct.
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to establish. There are non-oak, non-sycamore heritage trees designated, but not in this case. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I apologize, Steve. I was trying to look up the reso itself, which is actually on the city's website. There's a specific section of the city's website titled Trees in Ojai. If you just Google trees in Ojai, it'll come up.
Well, Nikhil, you have conclusively demonstrated you can find the facts quicker than the rest of us, and I appreciate that.
No worries. No problem. That's what I'm here for.
Okay. Absent any additional questions for staff, let us hear from the applicant, if we can bring him into the conversation. Cheryl?
Ray Hanstead has joined the meeting.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm Ray Hanstead. I'm the Creekside Village HOA Board President and the Landscape Chair. I represent 69 homeowners, all of whom care deeply about our trees, which number about 250. I have nothing to add to the reports. I'm sorry that our arborist couldn't join us because we do rely upon our experts. But some of this work we've been trying to start previously, but we've been on hiatus because of nesting patterns and also just pondering an overall report. We have actively replaced trees. We have replanted an oak, and we have another one scheduled for a replacement. But just to answer the possible question, but some of the trees that have become hazardous or failed is partly because of location and age. And so finding places to plant big trees also becomes challenging, but we think we're on the right path with this plan. And I really want to thank your staff for helping us negotiate our way through this process.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Nolan.
Yes, I do have a question. Could you give me some history on the maintenance background on these sycamore trees?
I'm not, as far as history way back, I'm not
How far
very,
can you go?
well, I don't know. I was here when some of them were planted and now they're mature and they're not subject to our study right now because they're doing well, actually. But the trees in question, I think 3 of the sycamores obviously were not well maintained and pruned, and we have since avoided that tree service and those recommendations, but we have more than annually reviewed the entire property looking for maintenance issues and have in fact worked with treescapes over the last 4 years to try to take good care of the sycamores and the oaks.
May I follow with another question? What was the main, okay, so after you started working with treescapes, what was their recommendation as far as pruning and caring for those sycamore trees?
Well, their recommendation has been limited to pruning, which has been done since we started working with treescapes, and there are further recommendations that are included here. We would plan to implement subject to the permit.
Right, so I have a concern. The trees have been pruned very poorly, except for maybe one that I looked at. I actually walked around the entire site and looked at all the trees that were on the list, including the ones that are not necessarily covered, you know, as far as being protected. And I understand, you know, we don't need to review those. But I was just curious, you know, when this pruning practice took place, and now because of this pruning practice, these trees are considered hazardous, are going to be taken out, or that's the recommendation. And then there's no replacement due to no fault of the tree, but due to faulty maintenance. In my opinion, and I looked at all of them, and that's why I was asking, what was the history with the
Right.
pruning? And at some point, if you did hire an arborist and they were doing poor work, it sounds like you identified that. Did you have somebody?
Correct.
Oftentimes, you can actually rebalance the tree through a proper pruning schedule over a period of years. It's not going to be back to perfect the way it should have been pruned, but you can kind of structurally get them sound again by doing that. It does not look like, or it does not appear that that's happened.
I can say with certainty that the some of the unfortunate pruning that took place was under a previous board, and at that time we didn't have a comprehensive tree plan, which was part of the problem. There was, I think, some work that was done piecemeal rather than with a planned approach, and also again, ill-advised. And we did try to nurture some of the trees back, but Jerry Monahan felt that the ones that are on my mind right now were
That's your arborist.
the arborist from Treescapes, that they were hazardous and somewhat doomed.
Yeah, it would have been really helpful to have him here to ask
I
questions.
know, I'm very sorry he couldn't be.
Unfortunate, yeah. Okay, well, I'll turn it over to the rest of my commission for questions.
Commissioner Lottis.
Ms. Hanstead, so even if you weren't going to replace like for like, that were the removal of the six sycamores, they seem to me to be in locations where maybe you would want some sort of tree replacement. Have you discussed that option with the arborist? I mean, it sounds like you're not going to do anything, and I'm just wondering, well, what about a more appropriate tree replacement?
I don't think it's really characterizes our plan to do nothing, but we don't have a tree replacement plan. To be honest, we have so many trees right now that need some attention that we haven't looked at the replacement portion.
Just a quick comment about a nonprofit organization in town that you may or may not be aware of, but it's called Ojai Trees. And they will, it's a volunteer organization. They will plant trees for you at a very low cost of $150 per tree. They come in, they assess the appropriate tree for your whatever location you're talking about. And then with the volunteer effort, they will come in and plant. So for $150, you could have new, albeit small, but well thought through selection of tree and terrific planting protocol. And they're awesome. They're just awesome.
Yes, we thank you for that. We know about them and plan to be in touch with them because at the end of last year, we had an oak permitted to be removed that was in terrible and dangerous condition, and we are replacing it like for like in that case. And we plan to call upon Ojai Trees for assistance for that.
Okay, I mean, it's a
Thank
very,
you.
it's a good low cost way of obtaining trees, in my opinion, but that's my thought.
Commissioner Trent?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So I was just reading through the treescapes and the arborist's review, and he's got some great recommendations. It looks like, some of these trees were planted, almost 40 years ago, and so they're kind of midlife, so to speak. So I could see how, they're starting to go. And he recommends having kind of a robust plan. So I'm just curious what your management strategy might be, considering that, I know the 12 are probably a lost cause, but obviously this you got 250 of them, so this trend might continue. We're not getting a whole lot of water in Ojai, so just curious on what the plan is.
Our general plan is one of the reasons that we engaged Treescapes was to have a comprehensive plan that we could follow. And that's definitely our intention. I know the arborist mentions budget, and we have reserve and current budget designated for as much of this as we can at one time. And also his plan to have some of the work rotate will also help us implement it. So we plan to follow the plan.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just curious. He was outlined kind of a tree wellness program, and
we wanted that. I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
We were very fortunate after I and others came on the board, and we did have some trees that did not get, they had well-intentioned but not adequate care. We called upon Treescapes to help us with a tree inventory just to see what we had and where we could go. Right. So this is a relationship we built with an arborist, and we hope it continues. And I'm sorry he's not here to address it more, except I'm a lay person, so I'm sorry he's not here.
Oh, no, that's all right. I mean, he's done a great job. He one of the things he talks about is kind of a 2% remove and replace strategy each year to kind of maintain the age and the diverse population. So just curious in your planning if that was a consideration as well.
Well, it is, but to really confirm the plan, we were waiting for feedback from the commission and a permit, and then we would be able to create a timetable for moving forward.
Okay, cool.
So, and again, this we're also mindful of birding season. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
Commissioner Nolan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to commend you for actually hiring the arborist to come in and go through your campus, and the fact that you do have so many trees. It's brings so much value to the city of Ojai and the valley overall. So, I mean, that's to be commended. My concern is that, I think except for one of those sycamores, they were all pruned poorly. And so now they're being deemed hazardous. Several of them, I don't know that they're necessarily hazardous. I walked around and looked at them. They're not immediately next to a building or anything. They've been pruned back so severely that it's not like a limb is going to fall. I think it's more that structurally they do not look good. So I could understand, okay, well, maybe we want to take it out for that. Or potentially it could, because of the pruning practices, cause structural defects. Whether or not something would happen right now is another story. I I would be more inclined to look at this and say, oh, I approve the removal of those if I saw a replacement list coming in saying this is what we propose. Not that you necessarily had to plant in the exact same location if it was too close to a building, but some of these trees are farther away from a building, as Commissioner Lottis pointed out. You're going to have some, big holes without shade, and tree canopy that I think is so important and provides so much cooling to the Creekside community there. So, I mean, that's kind of where I stand on this. And of course, and the other trees that I looked at, and we don't, not that you're going to have to get a permit for those, but I know the liquid ambers, if you go around the valley, there's a rare, good looking liquid amber that we just don't get enough water. We've had all the drought off and on for so many years. So I understand some of the other trees, and I look at them. The sycamores, which are protected, I do have a question about, and would love to see a replacement. And I also, referring back to the report, which was very well done, it refers to the kind of the mixed urban forest where you have a diversity of ages, young, medium, and older trees. And of course, if they become hazardous or what have you, you start removing it, but then you replace it so you have this constant, a good balance of age diversity. So anyway, that's kind of where I stand at the moment.
May I respond?
Yes.
I agree with you, and I think there are 3 sycamores. I can't find them on the report right now that we're suddenly rooting for, and we're hoping, it's not like we're going to take this and run out and do everything at once. And so we're really open to perhaps the 3 sycamores that come to mind might actually, though they're deemed hazardous partly because of location, we're hoping that they might, come around. So I think we're also hopeful. We're not just looking to run in and, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like I said, I walked through and I looked at every single tree. I took a photo of them all.
Thank
and,
you.
Assessed it. And I used to have an arborist in my employment. I've taken numerous hours of arborist. I'm not a certified arborist. I want to state that, number one. But I do have a training in horticulture and landscape architect and a contractor. And I used to have an arborist under my employment. Actually, my ex-husband was an arborist. But and I used to write reports with them and go out, and I was a PCA. So I have a lot of experience doing it. I just am not licensed or certified. But so I feel like my assessments, made sense when I went out and looked at them. And I did see, on some of the trees, they were leaning, or of course the liquid ambers are just, it's pretty obvious. And I think what happened with those as well. And I would also, I know you don't have this in the report, but just something to keep in mind. And it didn't have anything to do with you. It was done when the development was put in the landscape. You can see a lot of root girdling around the bases of a lot of the trees. And so they probably got a great deal at a nursery for like really tall trees and a good price, but they were root bound, and you get that root girdling, and that potentially weakens the structure of a tree as well. And oftentimes makes them hazardous. So that's just something, down the road as you do replacement. But once again, most of the sycamores that, you could just see the damage was caused from poor pruning.
Right. And
yeah,
I agree with you. And I just want to add that, the liquid ambers are the bane of our existence because they're becoming hazardous.
I agree. I looked at them. Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand that. And they're not protected. So.
And there's not a lot we've been able to do about it, but I appreciate everybody's feedback a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Lottis.
So I have another question, and actually, I don't know if it's for the applicant or for staff, but so I definitely appreciated that you spent the money to hire a consulting arborist, and as Mr. Monahan explained, I mean, a consulting arborist has far superior training to, I mean, it's extensive, and it's much more than just a certified arborist. So I appreciate that you sought out expertise. that you understood the importance of developing a plan and a plan with phased replacement. But I'm wondering, so, and the plan talks about not topping the trees, and then there was the new term I actually hadn't heard about, what's called lion's tailing, where they trim it in such a way you get all that bunch of small tiny limbs in the middle. And so anyway, so they talk about not doing that, but how does the HOA envision that you'll actually implement the plan? I mean, how will you choose your tree cutter company, and who will supervise, and who's going to be making these determinations of the items in the plan that in some respects are rather general? They're not always well specified, in my opinion. So I'm concerned about executing what's in the plan without having the trees butchered once again.
Yeah.
I mean, will you have a consulting arborist come out and supervise or talk through with the crew who comes out and trims the trees? I mean, the devil's always in the details, and I just
Well, actually, some of this work is being done by Treescapes.
okay.
So
they run a crew.
Yes, so some of it will be done by them. And I can only say that in our efforts to elevate our approach, even when we had fire department recommendations, we sought permits and replaced. And so I think our pattern is some indication of what we're doing. I mean, obviously, as with city councils and planning commissions, we can't control who will be on the board, but the
Right.
Intentions are very good. And that's all I can say. We have the budget commitment for the first phase of work, and we realize that this is an important part of property value, and also balancing with our own liability for having proper tree work.
So Lucas, so if we get to the point where we have a tree plan that we actually, the planning commission approves the tree plan, is that right?
They're approving the removal of the 6 trees that we're talking about here, and the
We're
overall.
talking about approving the permit, not a plan.
Yeah, and the plan is really.
What happens to the plan?
The plan is a part, I would say the plan is a part of the permit in terms of what we're looking at here. But the commission itself is approving the removal of those 6 trees and the pruning of those other 2 that are all sycamores. That's really what's at and before the commission.
Oh, okay. So the plan, that's the end of the plan. I mean, it doesn't have any further meaning in terms of the city able to enforce anything, any part of it.
That's not to say that within the plan, and Ray, correct me if I'm wrong here, but 2 years down the road with their plan, they identified that another 6 trees that are either oaks or sycamores or even more, that are deemed to be removed by some sort of, maybe it's a pest infestation that's taken place for any of those trees, and we're looking at the removal of that. That would come before this body once again for review and an update. I would say even an update to what that plan looks like at this point. I think
do we take the plan? Would we take the plan and put it in the address file?
Well, yes, of course. The plan would definitely go within the address file itself. It's a part of the record. It was part of the record for tonight's meeting, and it's a part of the record.
Okay. And so if we talk about tree replacement, I mean, that would be part of the plan, or possibly also part of the permit to take out some trees.
Yeah. I mean, Ray was talking about not having a developed replacement plan at this point, but she's also talking about that even though the trees are being removed, it's not to say that there wouldn't be a replacement at some point in the future. I think with this commission, just as an example, there has been several cases where individual trees, whether they be oaks or sycamores, that have been removed on single family properties and deemed hazardous. Now, by our code, I can't require that as a staff, but I can certainly ask the question on removal. And I would say 80% of the time it's replaced immediately. 20% of the time, or maybe even 10% of the time, they're talking about replacement sometime in the near future. And then 10% of the time to that, it's just not a replacement for whatever reason. So we're still seeing a lot of these trees being replaced, maybe not necessarily as they're being removed. And I think that's partially to Ray's point and what she was talking about earlier. If the commission and Ray agrees, we could add a condition that talks about the phased replacement of a portion of those trees. Even though they've been deemed hazardous, and the replacement of that isn't required per the code, that's not to say that there couldn't necessarily be a replacement in the future, and have that condition.
Yeah, although, I mean, I was extolling the act of hiring a consulting arborist, but the fact remains is that the arborist was selected by the client, the customer, the home HOA. The HOA paid the consulting arborist, and so the consulting arborist takes the point of view of the HOA. It's not like there was a city arborist that was hired and wrote a report that was perhaps had a different customer orientation. So we have to keep that in mind as well. That anyway, go ahead, Kathy. Sorry.
So I have another comment. I think, the report is great. So normally we get a tree report per each tree when we're looking at a tree. And I know these, there's a brief paragraph for each one. I just don't feel like I have enough adequate information, and because the arborist isn't here, we can't even really ask the questions. So, I would like to see more information as to why he's calling these trees hazardous, other than the fact, and I'm referring to the sycamores only. And I understand there's pruning on 2 of them, but the ones that are slated for removal, or that he's recommending for removal, I see these, poor pruning, but to me, it's like, I think I would like to have more information, and I would definitely, like, I'm kind of disputing his hazardous call on some of these trees.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are closer to the building, but at the same time, it looks like a lot of it was due to poor maintenance. And in which case, I would require or want to have a mitigation, even if it was a schedule with a, even if it went out for 2 years, like every couple of years, you're going to plant so many trees to meet mitigation for to allow the removal of those trees.
I would support that, Commissioner.
I'm not seeing, yeah.
I would support that, definitely. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions as well, if the other commissioners have come near the end of their lists of questions. I noticed in the report there was to my way of thinking at least, a definite emphasis on saying this is okay to do because it preserves the tree canopy. But I believe that some of these tree removals, in fact, leave bare patches, as Commissioner Nolan was speaking to, where you have more heat on the ground and such.
Right.
And so I'm a little concerned that may be misleading in a way. I don't think that either preservation of tree canopy, or perhaps just as important, preservation of, let's call it, oxygen producing capacity of some section of the urban forest. I don't think either one of those things is in the municipal code. And so there's not a hard requirement that we can point to for replacement. Is that right, Lucas?
Right. You'd be applying the strict standards of the code, and I'm not aware of those provisions.
I don't like all parts of the code, but I hesitate to impose restrictions that are not supported by some part of the code. That said, Ms. Hanstead, you said of the, there are 8 sycamores, 6 proposed for removal, 2 for pruning, and of the 6, 3 you're hoping will come back?
It's possible. I mean, I'm not a professional, of course, as I've said, I'm a layperson.
Only Commissioner Nolan is a professional in this area. So,
Right.
I guess the
And-
question is, if you think they're going to come back and they're rated hazardous, what does that mean?
They look healthier now than they did the last 2 years since we started that, to
Okay.
my layperson perspective. But we have, you know, a drought ahead. So I don't know. We look at every tree carefully, and, you know, we deal with infestations and other tree care. The removal or pruning is only one aspect of our, you know, landscape and tree care.
Yeah, and I just want to mention a piece of the code that I think is important in weighing, and I'm hearing some concerns regarding the report itself and maybe the breadth of detail that maybe we're looking at within the 17 trees, 6 in particular for removal and the 2 for pruning. Section 4-11.06 subsect A4 reads, if the report determines that the tree is hazardous or in a serious state of decline due to pest infestation or other cause by no fault of the owner, the permit fee shall be waived by the city. In addition, no replacement mitigation shall be required. So I think that calls to question the arborist report itself. Is there enough information that's been provided?
Yeah, typically we do get more information, and they'll actually, you know, go out and they'll rate the trees and give them a score.
The commission always has the right to reject the arborist report and require mitigation, or the commission could also, if it so chooses, continue and to another date and have the arborist come in and discuss the report as well.
Thank you, Nikhil. That's actually what I was about to.
Yeah, I was going to
I
say.
like that latter
too.
idea. Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be a real good idea.
Ms. Hanstead, do you have an idea of your arborist's availability?
No, I don't.
If we continue this item to a date certain, so-called a specific date,
Yeah.
then notice of all the surrounding landowners and such is not required. If we do it to a date uncertain and wait to hear from you as to when the arborist is available, then the city has to go back into a notification procedure, and it's a lot more work.
Well, and just to clarify, Chair, this particular item does not require public notice. It's not a public hearing item, it is a discussion item, which does happen to have a resolution attached to it for consideration.
Okay. Well, how about as a compromise then, we continue this item to a date uncertain, waiting notification from the applicant as to the arborist's availability. And Ms. Hanstead, as you no doubt discovered by being here tonight, the commission normally meets on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. And so if you and the arborist can settle on one of those kinds of dates, then we can all get together and I think sort this out in a way that allows us to make a more informed decision on your permit.
Okay. I will speak to him and do my best.
And let us know when your arborist is available, and then we'll schedule it. You work with Lucas, and we'll schedule a rehearing at a time that's acceptable to the commission and to your arborist.
Okay.
If I might, add one bit of piece of information here. I think it may be helpful for Ray to take back to the arborist as well. And that is, it sounds to me like there was a couple pieces of information and concerns that were raised. I think the lack of detail that was being provided for the trees that are slated for removal, as to the rationale, reason or rationale for the removal of those trees. I think that, and correct me, I mean, Commission, speak up if I'm incorrect in terms of how I'm.
Sounds right to me.
That seems to be the biggest glaring piece to this. Your report with the trees that are slated for removal have, well, I want to say 2 sentences that speak to the removal of the trees and not giving a whole lot of breadth of detail for the reasons for it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Nolan?
Yeah, and may I just add also, the 2 sycamores that are going to be pruned, typically in an arborist report, you'll have a up close photo of the tree showing with a notation, you know, these are the limbs we're going to remove. So we have an idea, and then we have something to base our decision off of. You know, we have more detailed information. So once again, I want to say thank you for doing this first step. I personally just feel like I need more information. And Lucas succinctly described that. And then in addition, if you could have them include the 2 sycamores that are being pruned with more detailed information.
And so my feedback is I appreciate everything that you're saying. And when we had the oak tree that I mentioned earlier removed, that was just totally rotted and old, there was a request for more information. It did not come to the commission. And we provided that, as well as offered replacement, which was not required of the oak tree. And that level of attention to all of these trees would be cost prohibitive for us. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I'm just referring to the trees that are protected, not
Right.
the amber, not the eucalyptus, because they're not protected. So it's really the protected trees that you have to get the permit for are the ones that, you know, maybe after we talk to your arborist, we'll have more information and we, you know, we'll be able to make a decision. But at the same time, we may still say, oh, that may need to be, in our opinion, and I'm just speculating here, possibly, that we may say we would like to see that mitigated. And we're only talking about the protected trees that require the permit, not the remainder of the trees.
Yeah, so we're, instead of the 17, right, that are in the report itself, what the commission is talking about are the 6 trees slated for removal and those 2 trees that were highlighted for trimming or pruning.
Right.
Okay, can we, if we could.
As an alternative, may I just ask, is it possible if Mr. Monahan is not available, is it possible to ask him to provide further detail to that section of his report? Or do you prefer an in-person?
In-person would be much preferred because you can ask follow-up questions.
Okay.
Right. And the details will definitely help too.
Yes, right,
Which
exactly.
are typical.
I suspect he has a
Right.
lot of the details in his notes as he made the rounds of your forest there anyway. So we need Lucas then, or Nikhil, we need a motion to continue this item to a date uncertain.
Yes.
Awaiting advice from the applicant as to the availability of the arborist.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you. I commend you on coming up with a plan now, though we haven't seen all of it yet. It's certainly, you're moving in a much better direction than your predecessors, and that's good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so who would like to make a motion? I'll do it if nobody else cares to.
It almost sounded like you already made it.
Yeah, motion
Say
to
it again.
continue this item to a date uncertain, awaiting advice from the applicant as to the availability of the arborist for additional questions and additional details on the trees that are proposed for removal and pruning.
Correct.
The protected trees.
Yeah,
that are
I'll second that.
proposed. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any discussion? Thank you, Commissioner Nolan. Any discussion of the motion? Then Cheryl, let's have a roll call on that motion, please.
Quillisi,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes,
Lottis,
Yes,
Trent.
Yes.
Terrific. All right, we can move on to informational items and Lucas, your director decisions. I didn't see anything in there that jumped out at me. I appreciate the new protocol of providing all the commissioners with I don't say advance notice, but very timely notice on any DEs. And as you know, I respond to all of them. Do we have any other comments or questions from commissioners on the director's decisions in that page or two there?
Just to give the commission some feedback, the trees that you're seeing here, the ones that were slated for removal, I've actually reached out to each of these individuals and had the conversation on if there were ones that were identified as hazardous, whether or not there was a plan to replace those. Even though within our code, I can't require that, but I can certainly always offer up the question. And I wouldn't say put pressure on the individuals, but certainly have that conversation and kind of get a feel for what their bigger plan is. So in some of these, it doesn't show that the tree is to be replaced immediately, but in having those conversations, these individuals look to some sort of replacement in the near future.
thank you, Lucas, for doing
yeah,
that.
thank you.
Much
Thanks for,
appreciated.
exactly. We want to maintain our tree canopy for our tree city.
Especially now that those mature trees are not covered anymore, so.
Just as in so many other ways, you're doing a good job for us, Lucas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doing the good work.
I just say thank you to y'all for taking care of our trees so beautifully. It's a lot. Thank you.
Okay, future agenda items, Lucas?
Yes, well, hold on, let me get to that page here. April 21st, we have the sign permit, which was just continued, date specific to the 21st, as you saw. I am working with that applicant on some other design revisions to get it honed in for this commission to take a look at and then make a determination. I don't have it listed here, but I do have two other items that are, well, one other item that is up and it's a concept review off of Montgomery. So you can expect that to be coming forward either on the 21st or on May 5th. I'm just looking at the details currently to see.
That's the southeast corner of Montgomery and Willow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so it's an interesting plan. I won't go into a ton of detail. We'll talk about it more when it comes forward to the commission, but look forward to that in the very near future. And there is also an item that I believe will be coming forward on the 21st, and that is a use determination for a farmer's market at the Chaparral School District site. So you can definitely expect that to be seen more than likely on the 21st. I can't make any guarantees, but that's what we're pushing for right now.
Okay, I have been warned by Nikhil in the past not to get too specific. We have a farmer's market right now in the city on PL zoned land, but it's city owned land. Are the rules any different for farmers markets in other areas or other zoning districts?
I look forward to having that
other ownership.
Yeah, I look forward to having that conversation when the item is agendized and we have that discussion.
Okay.
We're getting into specifics. I know that you want to we want to stay general, but I think that's probably a question best for
Little too
staff when it's
specific.
agendized.
Okay, all right, all
Yep.
right.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll keep testing the envelope, but I appreciate your advice, Nikhil.
Or to ask those questions to tell you whether or not to slap your hand on whether or not we can.
Yep. Okay. Any commissioners have reports or other information you want to pass on? Okay,
I
Rod?
have one question
Yes, ma'am.
on the general plan for Lucas. So when the draft general plan comes out, what I'm hoping is that we will be able to see at least the existing policies, and where there are changes there, that would be shown either with strikeout or underlining, because I don't want to see a draft where it's just the proposed, and I have to then go
Figure out
back
the
and
thing.
search through God knows what to find the existing. I want to be able to have a very easy comparison, existing and proposed. So
You're asking, is there going to be a red line version out there, kind of like,
Well,
in terms of the goals and policies?
yeah, I mean, I don't know what the best way to do it, but I mean, by the time you actually decide on it, getting to council, I'm sure you've got to have the legislative format, but even in those initial stages, I think it's valuable and important to have the if we go topic by topic or element by element, we were able to see what was there before and what the changes are, because otherwise things drop through. They just
Right.
drop through the cracks, and we've got to see both.
I think the red line version is probably the best way to give us an idea there of what changes, if any, are going to be proposed.
Well, I feel like this commission, if any other commission out there, certainly this commission's been conditioned to read and understand red line documents certainly through Title 10 from what we've been going through. So it's almost as if, I can't make any guarantees that that's the case. However, I will definitely take that back to the consultant and have that conversation. We have a bi-weekly meeting with them. So
that would be good. When I see a proposed new document, if it isn't a red line version, then I'm faced with trying to figure out where the red lines really are hidden in there. And that's
Exactly.
more work than it ought to be for
Exactly.
those of us that are making the decisions.
Yeah.
Commissioner Nolan.
Just a question. So this red line version, maybe Lucas, this is a question for you. Is this something that will be coming to the planning commission and, be like a public hearing, or is this just not specifically coming to planning commission and just going to be posted on, like, say, the city website for anyone to review?
that is unknown at this point, whether or not it would come to the full commission for discussion.
We're not here.
There are certain items that we're currently looking at coming back to this full commission for consideration, and certainly comment on where it's at. This is being done in pieces, right? It's not as if this general plan update is all encompassing. I think the example that you're seeing here is the housing element. I have reached out to the full commission asking for dates. And it looks like the 26th is not going to work for that housing element. There's too many individuals that aren't going to be able to make that meeting. And I'm wanting 100% participation for that. And not only that, but we'll be doing a pretty big blast to the community to get involvement. And so you can expect a large crowd at that discussion meeting for planning commission. It'll be a special meeting too. It's not necessarily something that we're going to have as a regular meeting, only because it makes for a late night for us, but then also it takes away from the applicants that have already submitted applications, paid the fees, and are expecting some sort of determination. So
Right.
that's the reason for the special meeting.
I think a special meeting is much more appropriate. And I know the housing element and the land use element, I think, are two of those that are definitely part of the update, where there are other elements that are not. Is that correct?
Yeah, the housing element, the land use, the circulation, air quality are all ones that are getting a deep dive. The rest of them are getting, I would say, consistent. Lipstick and makeup is probably the best way to put it, right? In terms of being updated to the current standards, there are state standards that and code that have to be
Mandated
updated.
updates,
Those.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a housing element that is updated regularly, but the rest of these elements aren't. They only get their update every 20, 25 years. So I wanted to also, since we have the opportunity here, since it is on the agenda, I wanted to mention that we're looking at another potential date. And I'm not saying that I need a straw poll here, but I want you all to go back to your calendars and take a look at an alternative date now that I just got this afternoon of May 3rd. Maybe a 6 p.m. special meeting. So I'm not saying that I need a response from the commission tonight, but just know that that's the new date that I've gotten with April 26th not working. So don't respond right now, but just know that you'll be receiving an email, and then that's when I'll ask for a response.
Okay.
A lot of moving parts with this. I think you can expect to see some of these items coming before the commission sooner rather than later. We're looking at some other updates as well. The housing element is only one piece to this, obviously, to this puzzle of the general plan. So you can expect this other aspects to be coming to commission and obviously council as well. So,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, just a quick question. So basically, at the special meeting, it's going to be the housing element. Is that correct? The one where, and then that'll be like a public workshop, correct? And then or
Yes,
not?
it'll be a presentation. Yes, the
Okay.
idea is to have a presentation and then offering up comments as it relates to the housing element. As we're sliding in from this 5th cycle of the housing element into the 6th cycle.
Right.
We know now that our arena numbers, I don't want to get into too much detail on this because I know there's going to be a lot of detail that's going to be revealed at this. I don't want to call it a workshop per se because it's not going to have that same feeling of breakout groups and lots of questions. It's really going to be a comment period and more than likely some focused questions to be thinking about and considering and commenting on through this. It's not going to be where we're breaking out into 4 or 5 different groups where individuals are going to be speaking in a kind of a circle.
So we'll have a presentation and we will invite public comment.
Yes, public comment, public questions. That's going to be kind of the difference here is it's not necessarily where and I mean there is going to be a certain limitation, I suppose, to a certain degree, so that we're not having grandstanding for 20 minutes on specific items, but reasonable comments coming in and responses to questions that are going to be weighing.
Okay.
So is this going to be chaired by the planning commission or is this by the consultants putting it on? We just happen to be attendees along with other members of the public, et cetera. That's my first question. And then my second question is after this, well, call it a workshop or whatever we want to call it. The consultants are going to take it back. They're going to, at some point put together a housing element draft. Does it then come back to us and for us to review? Because I know in the past, we have always done the review on the housing element. So.
Yes, what I want to avoid is in September you seeing a first draft of this housing element when we're trying to get this adopted mid-October. So just know from a timeline standpoint that's
so we'll see a red line version of the housing element in this case. And
I don't know that you're necessarily. I don't want to state that you're going to necessarily see a red line version of our housing element. There could very well be entire areas that are marked out because over the last 8 years, there's been code change that pretty much strikes out an entire section.
yeah.
It's tough to say that I can provide or that we're going to be providing a red line version in this case. That one's gonna be partially tough. I know Commissioner Lottis, you were asking about a red line version for the entire general plan. I think there's there's definitely an opportunity when we're looking at goals and policies, like you're talking about those, because those are the guiding principles of,
Yes,
of
that
what
in
frames
particular,
of the
Yeah.
argument for.
yeah.
uh,
I think it's really important that we see if we're throwing away policies or we're we're changing existing. Yeah, we really need to see that to understand what we're doing and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
And
And
if the consultants are starting with a document, whether it's the general part of the general plan, or whether it's the housing element or another element, if they're going to come back with a different document, they will have done that incrementally by either adding or deleting text from the document they started with. And it seems to me that's the red line version right there.
mhm.
And they ought to be keeping good records of what they're changing. Or there's a configuration control problem that we might need to talk a lot more about.
Yeah, and within within the framework of the housing element itself, I think you can expect a fair amount of discussion regarding the SPL overlay sites.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, look, you guys have the commission has certainly brought forward an interesting point. So I'll take that back to the consultants.
Okay.
Details of it.
And Lucas, just as a point, if it's a planning commission meeting, we're still looking at 3 minutes limited for public comment for each public commenter.
Let me just ask you a question, Nikhil. Is that a Brown Act requirement, or is that
We can let people go longer, but we have, if we so choose, but comment, it often makes sense to let people know that comment is limited to 3 minutes. So
the idea is to be succinct with the comment, is what you're saying, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Grants, that's kind of what I was getting at. The 3 minutes,
Right.
I guess, still does kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Um,
There's no requirement to go beyond the 3 minutes. And 3 minutes is usually the adopted public comment cutoff.
mhm. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Absent any other comments, I just want to say one thing for maybe housekeeping purposes here, and maybe Nikhil can weigh in on it. You've noticed a different background in my picture tonight. I'm in Dallas at my brother's house. He is currently in the ICU at Baylor Plano Hospital with a number of issues. I don't know when I'll be back. Sherry asked me at one point if I could print, sign, scan, and return the minutes of the March 3rd, I think it was. And I asked if Kathy Nolan could sign in my place. I don't recall getting a specific answer to that.
I did.
Since I don't know when I'm coming back, if you can tell me if that's okay, I'd like to delegate it to her until I return.
I did sign and return it immediately yesterday.
Oh, you did? Terrific.
Yes,
So
yeah,
you can delegate that authority because she's the vice chair.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, super. That's all I needed then. Thank you.
Anything I can do to help, Steve.
yeah,
Thank
take
you.
care, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, our thoughts are with you.
Yeah, all right. Thoughts are with you, Steve.
Mayor Sticks, did you want to make any comments? You're sort of our city council liaison tonight.
I am. I'm grateful to be here, and I hope your brother, I'm sorry to hear that he's sick, and
We're working on it.
our
Yeah,
thoughts.
thank you.
No, I want to say thank you to all of you for doing this incredible work, and the detail and the organization and thank you. So
I think this group of commissioners takes the job very seriously.
I can tell. So much appreciated. And I salute you all. Thank you, Lucas, for all the work that you do. You're a tool. I appreciate that in a good way.
Okay.
And also loving the trees, because we all know we love trees. And so thank you, Kathy, and thank you. Yeah, I'm just really grateful, both Kathys and all of you. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Mhm.
if there is no other business before the commission, then at 7:47 PM, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you. Good night.